We'll do the one I lose, because I think that's more interesting. Where is it? Here we go. Where did it go? Here we go. I might be able to do this fairly quickly. There's not really that much that goes on in hand. Basically, so I'm playing a very aggressive match with Dishboy Sui. He absolutely ends up smacking me for about 3 buy-ins, which is quite gross. Anyway, I open 4-2 spades and button. He flats. He's been calling not very many buttons and 3-bet not very much, so I was just basically raising a ton of buttons at this point. I ended up at 70% because I adjusted, but at this point I think I was raising every button. So anyway, he checks to me. I make a c-bet with some backdoor equity, but really just because he's folding a decent amount. He calls. Turn comes a 3. I bet. He raises. I shove. He calls. Alright. So my reasoning in this hand was flawed, but probably not the reasons that you're thinking why. Okay, so he's 3-betting 16%. At this point in the match, I think he was 3-betting a lot more than that. So let's assume that he's 3-betting ace 9, ace queen, aces, queens, pocket 9s. Alright. But he didn't 3-bet, he called pre-flop. If he had queen 9, which is the only 2-pair plus hand that he could have at this point, he would probably check raise that flop, because it's quite dangerous. There's a lot of and I could have an ace thinking that he's check raising a draw, so he can rep a draw quite well with bottom 2 pair, and I might get in with aces. Well, I will get in with aces, so he's probably going to check raise that flop because he's not a bad player. So really, when you actually look at his value range on the turn, my thinking on the turn was that the only hand he can have here for value is ace 3. And if you actually look at the stack sizes, he's got 100. Well, actually, I'm shoving. A second. So I'm making it 70, 82 more to call, into a pot of. I'm giving him slightly less than 2-1. So the correct thing for him to do when he's check raising, even hands that are like King Jack of clubs, which he might not even be check raising. I think he's check calling that a lot, but let's say he is check raising. You might actually have to fold because he's not a bad player and he knows that he's not getting the right price or whatever. And it doesn't really make sense for me to have air here. There's a ton of hands I could have. I could have ace queen, ace 9, queen 9, ace king, ace jack. I could have a really wide value range for shoving here. So my line looks very strong. And the only value hand he can have is ace 3. But when I thought about it, the way he had been playing his draws quite passively. So it's kind of bad to put people in a one-hand range. But this was the first time he had check raised at the turn in the match. So really, what else can I have except ace 3? I was when I got to the end, I'll play it to the end. My thinking on the turn was, his only value hand is ace 3 here. I guess the end, and he shows up with ace 3. And I was thinking, well, I run into the one hand in his value range, standard, and I was kind of fuming. But as I started toned down, and I like my bluff as well, because I've got a bit of equity with 5s and stuff. I suck out sometimes. But then I was thinking, does he ever do this with a semi bluff or just air? There was times earlier in the match where I double barreled, I think, and he hadn't check raised, and it would have been a good moment to check raise bluff. So I'm kind of loath to put someone on a one-hand range, especially a Swedish person, because they're notoriously wide ranges, no racist. But yeah, interesting hand anyway. That he could have had maybe a one-hand range there, and ace 3 is literally the only hand that gets the turn and plays it like that. Well, maybe likely. I don't know. I think this is definitely a much more interesting hand than the one that'll win. Okay. The other hand's more interesting. I'm going to edit out the start of the video. So you won't even see the start of the video in my sick introduction. How do you like me now? Right. We're going to go into this hand. This is a hand I played against Wydare, who had been playing very, very, very passively at the start of the match. I think he folded his first 14 hands, like in position and out of position. So tight, in fact, that earlier on in the match I raised the button with Queen Jack and he 3-bet and I folded. Now, as it transpired, he was a really weird player who 3-bet almost as much as he opened the button. He was folding all the buttons, but actually turned out he was 3-betting quite frequently. And he had folded to one. I had 4-bet once before the match, and he had folded. I'd been folding to quite a lot of his 3-bets. I don't really fold to that many 3-bets. Alright, so I'll talk through my reason a little bit for 4-betting here. Against a wide 3-better, having a queen and a king is almost as good a blocker to combinations of hands as having an ace is. So like, obviously ace 4 is better because there's more combinations of hands like ace x that they can have less of because we have one of the aces. But against someone that's like going to be 3-betting like quite a lot of queens, quite a lot of kings as well, like these hands are just as good blockers. This one plays quite well in 4-bet pots because you either like smash the flop or just miss it entirely. So yeah, I'd say 3-bet. He says call. I think it took quite some time. He had check raised once in the match before, and it was air, and I had seen him check call down on dry boards with like top pair. I think once before he had check called and was playing like his top pairs and one pair hands quite passively. So he checks a bit, he raises. Now at this point I was thinking, right, so why would he want to get it in against like my 4-bet value range with like a 1-pair hand? There's not that many 7s, and if he does have a 7, why not check call and just get the most out of bluff range? Because he's like a decent-ish thinking player, probably. Even if he's not, I mean, like, if I have a hand like queens, kings, or aces, like the money's going in anyway if he has trip 7s or ace jack. So he might as well like check call the flop if he has like a really, really like, because that's the type of board that you either smash it or you completely miss it. Like. And the times he smashes it, check raise is like such a suboptimal line. I just don't really see how he can, you know what I mean? Like check raise with his value range. And considering I've seen him like being capable of check raising air before, I decided to shove, and he folded, and we look like an absolute sexy poker rock star. Right, anyway, I suppose that sort of concludes this video, because I'm around 12.5 minutes, so I'm going to have to do some editing. Sick fun. Right, I guess this is Soul or Two Wisdomy, whatever you prefer. Signing off. Cheers guys.